What the Tech is sponsored by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks, with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian. Of course, I'm joined by Paul Thurrott from the windsupersite.com website. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm going to stick to that WindSuperSite intro.
Okay.
There may be people that have no idea who Paul Thurrott is.
Yeah, I would hope so.
I mean, maybe they're just saying, who is this guy? What does he do?
Who is this guy? He's bloviating.
He's bloviating. This is the show where we talk about technology, like two guys sitting at a bar. And you know what? Today perfect fit. We are literally drinking and sitting, not really at a bar, at a desk, but we're drinking 3 o'clock in the afternoon while we record the show.
Facing each other, virtually.
Facing each other, virtually facing. We're virtually drinking. This is what 2014 has brought to us. Two men, two adults, can sit there and have a drink on the internet together while a couple hundred people watch them. This is what we do now. Paul, what are you drinking today?
So we go to a local brewery called Blue Hills Brewery, which is literally up the street in Canton, and we're big fans of those guys, and they have all kinds of different beers. But I feel like in the microbrew world, that people get IPA and hops all wrong, and these guys get it all right. So I usually kind of rebel against IPA type beers, but this is called Quarter Mile IPA. It's kind of their best seller, I believe. It's actually, I think it's a double IPA, and it is it's kind of a citrusy IPA, I guess.
So we discussed that it has some sort of fruit inside, so it has to be healthy.
Well, okay, so let me show it to you. So it's you can see it's got almost an orangey kind of thing. It's got like a lemony, almost a grapefruity kind of taste to it. I'm actually told that's part of the beer making process and not an actual fruit, but I'm gonna run with the psychological or psychosomatic benefits.
You know what we need at times like this? We just need like a little and we have Mary Jo Foley here to tell us if that beer is good.
So actually, it's a funny thing. Mary Jo and I often joke and talk about beer, and we've joked amongst the two of us that our post-Windows, post-technology career we'll start a beer podcast, and we'll talk about beer. And
I think that's great. I think you should.
I've always said I'll be like the guy from Sideways, the movie Sideways, when he's like, I'm not drinking any freaking Merlot, except my line's going to be, I'm not drinking any freaking IPAs.
You're not a fan of the IPA,
actually really like their IPAs.
But in general, you're not a fan of IPAs?
As done by most microbrews, and maybe most is a bit of a stretch these days because things have taken a turn for the better with microbrews in the United States. But I would say up until about a year ago, certainly, if you went to some trendy kind of douchey microbrew place in any state in the country,
my type of place,
it would just be too much hops, like just almost hurt your mouth hops.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just a cheap effect. Like when you're making beer, if you think about the ingredients you can add to beer, hops is the one where with the littlest amount of work, you can add the most kind of bang for your buck, in the sense that it's easy to add that mouthfeel to beer. It's very easy. It's cheap. It's cheap. I don't mean inexpensive. I just mean it's cheap, like poorly done. Cheap.
I've always been a beer guy. Paul mocks me because I also like trashy beer like Budweiser. I'm a big fan of Budweiser. That was my dad's drinking Coors growing up because, like a guy in his 60s really never experienced an IPA. That wasn't something that happened.
Oh, no. But I would say for the 1980s, Coors was like a microbrew. I mean, it was like this thing from Colorado,
It was like a real
Corona
beer.
had the same effect, even though they're terrible beers.
I don't know if we spoke about it, but do you know why American, like domestic, traditional beer is so light?
Well, it got lighter over time, and it has to do with drinkability. And, Americans historically, and that's a kind of a small window, but in the sense of mass-produced beers, have preferred these kind of Pilsner type beers.
It's because of Prohibition.
Yeah, but if you think back, the reason that they're so light and they're so light, I guess, but they're so water-like, is that you drink more of them. This is the United States of America. We like more, bigger, more, better. We're the home of the big gulp, and these kinds of beers you can suck them down all day, and that's what they want you to do. The type of beers I drink, if you drank a few of these, not this one in particular, this is probably just 5% or some normal amount, but a lot of the beer we get from this place is 9, actually it's 8. So a lot of the beer we get from this place is 9, 11, up to 15. You drink a couple of those and you're not going anywhere tonight. Like, that's the end of the night.
Yeah, and you think about it.
That's a very different experience. And so, you think about, like, people don't guzzle wine. They sip wine.
Oh, no, I guzzle wine.
Okay, well, this kind of beer is not meant to be, like, sucked down as we would with like a
no.
Budweiser.
And you know what's fascinating? Like, you got like a Budweiser. It's like 5.5% beer, right? It's not as light as people think. It's 5.5% beer. You get like an IPA that's like 8 or 9.
Yeah,
like you're thinking, okay, well, it's not that much if you really think about it. But it really is. It's tremendous. I mean, it's a tremendous difference.
These guys, they make a beer called Imperial Red, which I want to say is 11%. Sorry, maybe 13, somewhere in there. But we didn't understand the effect this was going to have. So a year and a half ago, or whenever it was, we had the first one. My wife and I bought a growler of it, and we drank it watching TV at night. And then we woke up at 3:30 in the morning, and the TV was still on. And we're like, "What happened here?" And that's stupid, is what it is. But you don't understand the effect that stuff has. And I keep thinking, like, you'll get used to this or something. But the truth is, I don't know if it's a combination of age and alcohol, but a couple of these beers, and I'm in for the duration. That's it.
Over the last couple of years, I've really gotten into beer. I've actually have not had any beer in over a month now because of my diet, because I've cut out gluten. And it's been brutal, because every time I go to the restaurant I go to, Press 195 here in Queens, they have a great selection of microbrews. I mean, like, an unbelievable selection. They're always putting new stuff in. They don't pay me to say it, but they're really good people, and I'm there all the time. And it's just torture for me to sit at the bar and like order like this. Like right now, what I'm drinking is a peach vodka soda with strawberries.
Before we started recording, I joked that was tuna floating in.
It looks like tuna. It
looks like sushi tuna kind of.
Yeah, we had tuna last night, so the leftover, we just throw it in here, and you know what? It gives it a nice salty taste. Nice. It's like having olive brine in here, but not really.
A little spray of the ocean every sip.
It's like nearly drowning in the Atlantic.
Nice.
That's the feel that it has. So we're drinking today, and the reason why we're drinking is a couple of reasons. One, it's a Monday, and why not?
It's a Monday. Because it's Monday.
Because it's Monday.
That's why. And start the week off.
This week's going to be hell. 2, Paul's going to Build. And we're going to talk about the Build conference and what to expect and how it's going to go. And I'm going to NAB next week. So next Tuesday, there's no show. I'm hoping.
Is NAB in Vegas?
In Vegas.
Where is that?
In Vegas. And it should be a total it's like the biggest, conference that they have in the U.S. It's one of the big ones. It's all broadcasters and TV people. And I'm actually going for the weekend. And it just so happens that NAB falls on a Monday, so we extended it till Tuesday, our trip. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to go to Vegas and just get belligerent.
You don't have to explain that. Sure.
But people are like, hey, how come you're going so early? I'm like, yeah, because NAB happens to fall on this day. I'm actually going for my own leisure. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to, go for NAB, but I am going to end up going there. And I know a lot of our viewers are in the broadcasting world, so I'm going to meet up with a lot of them there. It's going to be like a little meet and greet that we have in Vegas. Should be fun.
Nice.
But you have a trip coming up, which we're going to talk about. But before we do, Paul, I want to talk about our sponsor, Audible. Everybody loves Audible. I'm a big Audible fan. My wife is a big Audible fan. And since I'm going away next week, I've loaded up on a bunch of audiobooks for the flight to Vegas, because it's a 5-hour flight. And I was hoping that I could at least get one book in. So I've been trying to find some smaller books, shorter books, not the 12-hour, 18-hour unabridged version or whatever. So I've been trying to find some small, shorter length books. But Paul, you have a great pick here today. It's a longer length book, but it's a great pick.
You should have told me about the shorter thing. I have when I started walking last year, and I'll be walking again soon because spring belatedly is finally occurring here. But I started to prefer shorter stories because you could kind of get through them, and you felt like you were accomplishing something. And I hear you on that one. I read a lot of Stephen King short stories last year, or listened to, I should say, and also some by his son, Joe Hill, who is also very good. I mean, there's some great stuff in there. I can recommend some of that stuff to you if you want later. But I just read a review of a new novel by Olin Steinhauer, and I believe it's his fourth. It's the latest in a series of books. It started with The Tourist, which I read several years ago, and I decided to go back and listen to this on Audible. It's called The Tourist, a novel, not to be confused with other books that have the word tourist in them and maybe are not novels. It has turned out being the first in a series. I remember liking this book quite a bit. In fact, I was able to get it on Audible for $3.99 because I already owned it on the Kindle.
Oh wow!
But it's what it is very much like a modern version of the Jason Bourne books. So kind of a John le Carré kind of spy thriller kind of thing. Very modern, very well written, very well done. Just started. I'm probably 3-4 chapters in. I'm very first 10-15% of the book. But as I get into it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, right. And this one is really, really well done. The Audible version is interesting because it's one of those kind of old school Audible recordings, which is kind of hard to explain why, but it has a very formal kind of presentation, I guess would be the way to say it. But just kind of a classic spy thriller, kind of a break from what I've been listening to lately. So.
Yeah, I actually, whenever you do a pick, I download it. Even if I don't get to it, I still download it because your picks are always great. And everybody always message like, "Oh, wow, that was such a good pick that Paul had for last week's Audible pick."
Yeah.
So I downloaded this instantly when you told me.
Okay.
So I was hoping, I'm like, I hope it's a little short. And then I look, I'm like, it's 12 hours. I'm like, you know what, though? I could do half of it on the way there and half of it back from Vegas, and I'm done.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never tried to listen to a book like that, but you're right. It's 12 hours long. You could conceivably get through it in the flights.
How do you do it? How do you listen to it?
I listen to them throughout the day, and so I've starting with last year, just about this time last year, I started walking, and the basketball season had ended. I wanted to do something. Walking is not a big exercise by any stretch, but I think just getting out and getting outside and all that stuff is healthy. So when it's nice out, I walk every day, and if it's not nice out, I work out on the elliptical you see behind me. And I listen at those times, and I listen when I shave. I listen when I'm in the car. You can tell it's a really good book when I shave and I've got it on. I crank up the volume so I can hear it when I'm in the shower. I kind of walk around with it for a little while, listen to it some more. Like, I don't commute, and I don't. Right now, I'm not traveling a lot, but I certainly do listen on planes. But I never thought to kind of plan for listening to a whole book on a trip like that. That's not a bad idea.
It's like a half and half,
Yeah. I mean, I would listen to it throughout the week as well, here and there, That's interesting. Yeah, I might try that.
If you want a free audiobook, Audible sponsors this show. You could do so by going to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. That's audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. I'm a big fan of Audible. I always have been. We were trying to figure out when the first audiobook that I downloaded was a couple of weeks ago. And right. I think we said Along Came a Spider in 1998. So I've been an Audible subscriber or an Audible user since 1998. So that's a long time to be downloading audiobooks. And I want to thank Audible for supporting What the Tech. So Paul, let's go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I can't remember what mine was, and I would never be able to find out because I've had a couple of different accounts on Audible, but I listened to audio books on cassette as long ago as, I don't know, 1988. I remember I had surgery on my knee, and a friend of mine had bought me some Stephen King audiobooks. In fact, one of them had a kind of a pseudo 3D audio effect where a fly would, it would sound like the fly was buzzing around in a circle, like around your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. As just kind of an effect.
It constantly sounds like things are buzzing around in my head.
Yeah. Turns out that was my tinnitus.
Yeah.
It's just, it never actually stopped. Yeah.
So let's go a little bit into Build. We are also going to talk about the Patreon campaign, but you're getting ready for Build. This is the exciting time of the year, right? Like this is what you wait for, where you get all that information that we've been waiting for all year. But before Build, I was surprised that Microsoft announced Office on iOS right before the Build conference. I would have imagined that they would have probably unveiled it during Build.
I think the way they did it was smart because Build is going to be, Build is a little confusing this year. It's about two things. from sort of a news standpoint, it's going to be, this is based on what sources have told me, and this is now some months old, but my understanding is this has not changed. It's going to be about the vision for Windows. I mean, there are specific things around like the Windows 8.1 update and, like Windows Phone 8.1 and so forth, but the keynote is going to be largely about tying all this stuff into a wider vision.
Is that a response to everything that's happened over the last year and a half, where they had this vision, they were going in this direction, and that vision forked off into 5 different roads?
So I don't know if they're going to admit to that kind of recalculation midstream, but certainly that did occur. A big part of it is going to be Threshold, which will probably be called Windows 9. Threshold is a number of product updates that is not just Windows, right? It's going to be Windows Phone and Xbox One. There was an announcement today about the Xbox One development coming under the guy who does Windows development at Microsoft. Shocker, because those are in fact the same exact operating system. They didn't really try to push that when the Xbox One came out because, Windows 8 wasn't off to such a great start and they didn't want that stink getting on Xbox One. But the truth is, these things are very, very, very similar. Yeah. It makes sense that the development of the evolution of these operating systems would proceed apace, with in hand. So that alone, I mean, just talking vision is something Microsoft hasn't done since before Sanofsky took over at Windows. That was something he never wanted to do. His time at Microsoft, his time leading the Windows team was all about responding to what had happened before. And of course, what had happened before him was Longhorn and Windows Vista, and they didn't want to repeat those mistakes.
And that was a great example of setting your roadmap and totally failing.
Yeah, being a little too transparent, promising maybe a little too much, and then not delivering, disappointing people. And then, of course, he responded to that in the way that one would, by going in the complete opposite direction, promising nothing until the very last minute when they knew they could do it, and kind of riding this wave of we will do what we promise, which sounds like a good thing on the surface, but isn't necessarily a good thing because businesses in particular need a much longer term planning than that. It's not just about tech enthusiasts who want to know what's next. It's, there are real business reasons to understand what's coming down the pike because you make buying decisions based on
especially when you create something like Windows 8, which is totally different than what, what enterprises used to for the last 15 years. Enterprises used to whatever they've been getting, which, I mean, pretty much since Windows 95, it's been the same, right? I mean, minimal
Microsoft
changes.
Could have had a conversation about touch in Windows, and they could have said, look, we feel like the future of computing is touch devices, and we're going to make Windows work in that world. It's going to be a few years. It's going to be a few versions of Windows, but this is where we're heading. And that would have started a very healthy debate out in the world. And people like me and readers and people on Twitter and Microsoft's corporate customers and TAP customers and whoever else all could have explained to each other what they thought this means, why it's good or bad, and Microsoft could have gotten some valuable feedback about that. But what they decided to do was be secretive and not tell anyone what they were doing. And then just sort of, a year before it was ready, say, here it is. And by the way, we don't care about your feedback. We're going to pretend otherwise, but we don't really care. And you're going to just suck it down like you always do when we release Windows. And, not surprisingly, people responded negatively to that. So, we find ourselves in this situation. It's the same situation we found ourselves in with Windows Vista, where there was a little bit of a recoil at this release of Windows. And they have to fix it. And, they're fixing it a little differently than they did back then, but it's this, amounts to the same sort of thing. And, it's a different team running that. And so these guys seem like they're interested in feedback. They've responded quickly. That's part of the new Microsoft too. So that's not just them being great, but, all of Microsoft changing. And, we see Windows 8.1 in a year. We see Windows 8 Update 1 in 4 months, and we'll see Windows 9 next year probably. So,
are we anticipating the developer build to be released this week?
No, I don't think so. Not for Windows 9, no. I think the Windows 9 stuff is largely vision. I literally believe that, I don't know why I said it like that.
I think that,
I want to be clear that this is my opinion. I believe that Microsoft is doing that thing that I just said, that they will say, this is what we're thinking about. We're starting this up right now, but we're listening. Does this make sense? You know, I really feel like this time they want to get feedback before they do it.
If we're looking at a April or like a second quarter 2015 release for Windows 9, I mean, that's giving them a year to get their message out, give it to developers, get the preview builds, work out all the kinks, and here's the new Windows, and this is technically the version that people should be happy with. It's a short time period.
Right. So it's not like it's a brand new thing. It's going to be what we might have otherwise called Windows 8.2. I think they want to get rid of the Windows 8 name. I think they want to scale back even further on what they've done to separate these two environments. I think they want to complete the picture. I've heard that they're going to have, floating Metro windows on the desktop and some form of a start menu. They're going to step back from the cliff. I think that's what this is all about. But I think the reason, I think that this release is really somewhere between, the 4-month, 1 year time frame, really, of real development. But I think what they're building into the schedule is, we really do want to hear what you think about this. This is what we're thinking. This is our schedule. Let us know what you think. Not the thing that they did in the past where they said, here's what we're doing. Provide us feedback. We have no formal way for you to do that, but we'll just pretend that we care, and we'll listen to what you say, and then we won't change anything meaningful because this thing has been locked and loaded. That's how we do things. Yeah. And I think this time they really want to listen. When I first wrote about Windows 9, I said, by the time of build, they will not have written any code. They're not starting development of this until sometime in April. And people came back and said, wait, that's crazy. What are you talking about? They're not even going to start on this. But I think that's part of this need that they have, or want that they have, to listen. This time, let's not jump the gun. We think this is where you're telling us to go. Microsoft loves metrics. They love feedback. They love not feedback, but they love
positive feedback.
The automated forms of it's metrics. Really, it's our study, our usage collection shows us that 97% of you do this. Thus, we're going to change it this way. That kind of thing. They love doing that kind of thing.
When do you anticipate a developer preview being released?
Well, I mean, I would just be guessing, but when you think about 1 year, you think 6 months would be maybe an ideal time for a beta, and 6 months from April is October, and October is a great time for a Windows release. It's a great time for a build conference.
And then we talk about preview release in January.
Yeah, and that's completely speculative. I actually have heard nothing about any kind of a release. I'm just guessing on that, but it's something like that. I think makes sense.
I was reading something the other day, and I think it was an email. I can't even remember, but I should have. I do this every time we do a show where I get a fascinating piece of information, and then I'm like, that's interesting. I should talk about it on the show, and then I totally forget about it until you bring up something that kind of ties into it. Somebody was bringing up the question that, is the future of Windows the name Windows? Is it time that they start moving away from the term Windows for their operating system because of the entire debacle with 8? I would have said that would have been that would have been great for them to do when it came to the phone and when it came to RT, to kind of separate themselves from Windows.
Yeah. I do think they've abused the name. I mean, it's weird because there's two sides to this. I mean, on the one hand, Windows is in fact a great brand. That's why they keep using it for everything. It's familiar and well known, and
when you have 90-something% of the market, why change it?
Yeah, but when Windows 7 was the current version of Windows, and they came out with this Windows Phone thing that had tiles and didn't look anything like Windows, the thought was, why would they call this thing Windows? When they came out with a product called Windows Azure, and they were having a hard time explaining to people what this was, because that kind of thing, which you could sort of talk about as a cloud operating system, but infrastructure as a service.
It's really not Windows.
It's not really Windows.
It's not the Windows that people identify with.
Yeah, but the way they were able to kind of sell it at the time was to say, hey, this is like Windows Server, but it's in the cloud. You can deploy your applications to it. You can run virtual machines on it. You can target it with your with Visual Studio. it's like Windows. And the fact is, like so much else at Microsoft that they put in the cloud, it has evolved to the point where it is not Windows anymore. It may be based on Windows, from sort of a technical perspective. And certainly the Windows Server product has benefited from Azure in that kind of cycle of life or circle of life sense. But it's really a different thing. And so I had heard this over a year ago, that there was a very big debate going on inside of Microsoft where the Azure guys wanted to call it Azure and get rid of Windows, and everyone else at Microsoft thought they were nuts. And they just announced, I think last week or 2 weeks ago,
that it's Azure.
Renaming it, finally.
And I've seen the commercials. It's all over on if you watch MSNBC, if you watch CNBC in the morning, there are, just a crazy amount of commercials for Microsoft Business, and I think they're calling it Microsoft Business, but Azure is the star of that ad.
Right.
And I found that when I saw it, I'm like, I haven't seen a Microsoft ad for corporate in years.
Yeah. I not to get too far into the server stuff, I think the server guys screwed up a little bit by introducing the concept of like a Cloud OS. Cloud OS was not a product. It was not a collection of products. It was more of a concept. The idea was that by adopting as much of this Microsoft Cloud technology, you could, in effect, be running what they think of as a Cloud OS. And they don't really have something called Cloud OS. Some people might argue they should just call Azure Cloud OS, whatever. Some people have joked that Windows Azure, which is kind of an oddly named product and something that's hard to pronounce, is, it has two names, Windows and Azure, and they got rid of the one name that everyone could pronounce.
Yeah.
Which, is actually a fairly fair criticism, but whatever. I don't want to focus too much on Azure. They are pushing this notion of user experiences that are common across devices. If you have a phone or a tablet or a PC or an Xbox, right, in your living room, you have tiles, you tap on them and things happen, and, they all work kind of similarly. All of those things are called Windows except for the Xbox. And there are some people who believe, and I kind of go back and forth on this one, but that maybe Windows Phone, even now, should be called something else, just because
of the branding issue.
Best name. But I think what we're going to discover at this build in particular is that Windows Phone is evolving into something that is essentially just another version of Windows. That is.
I'll tell you something on that, Paul. What I find interesting is that people, when you think of Windows 8, right? People have this weird thing with it where it's a negative. It's a negative relationship that the consumer has with Windows 8, where automatically they assume that this is not going to be good. That same connection does not exist for Windows Phone, even though it's Windows Phone 8.
Well, it's Windows Phone has a different problem, which is that it's not even considered. So I agree that it doesn't necessarily have that problem, but it has this problem where no one even.
I have to tell you, I'm seeing more and more people with Windows Phones walking around.
Yeah, well, it's funny. When I go into Boston on the train, I always look at phones, and every time now I see Windows Phones. It's very interesting.
It's like when you get a Porsche, everybody's driving a Porsche.
Yeah. It is probably like that, actually. Out in the world, I would say one of the problems I pointed out about Windows Phone many times was that you could go into any place and they would have some big poster on the wall and it would say download a mobile app, and then it would say iOS and Android. Sometimes, embarrassingly and humiliatingly, it would say iOS, Android, and BlackBerry, and it would be like, really?
BlackBerry, Palm OS.
right. Web OS. It's like, really? Now I'm starting to see Windows Phone on those posters, and I took pictures of a couple of them recently. Amtrak has a Windows Phone app. They've got a nice big ad at the Amtrak station that's near here. Home Depot has a Windows Phone app, and so they don't have an ad, a poster for Windows Phone. They just have an ad or like a poster for all of their mobile apps, and it's Android, iOS, Windows Phone. Nice. And these are just anecdotal. I'm not suggesting that some hump has been crossed or whatever, but it's getting there.
I also think that Microsoft. I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder, but from what I have seen and what I've attempted to do, it's obvious that Microsoft provides developers with the proper tools to make it easy for them to develop for their platform. When it comes to Windows Phone, it's much easier to develop for Windows Phone than it would be for Android, because they don't offer you crap.
Or iOS.
Or
Yeah,
iOS. It's very difficult if you don't understand the language as well as you should. But with Windows, for developing for Windows Phone, I mean, I attempted to do it, and I developed an app in, let's say, 45 minutes. I didn't publish it because it was crappy, but I was able to do it. And I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm a dummy.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's familiar with what they're familiar with. I've often said, not joked, but said, because it's true, that the biggest success of iOS or the iPhone or whatever is not the millions of people that use those products. It's that they've gotten developers to use those horrible tools, terrible language, ridiculous SDK. It's just crazy. And of course, the people who develop for those platforms are thinking, Paul, what are you talking about? It's fine. Of course it's fine. You're used to it. The iOS and Android developer stuff is so lackluster compared to what's available on Windows. And
it's amazing because they control the market.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't used to. The iOS stuff comes straight out of the Next Step hell from 1996. I mean, the whole way that the developer environment works today is still based very much on how that was almost 20 years ago. But whatever, I think one of the big stories from this build is going to be Microsoft's plan for cross-platform development, and hopefully is going to involve something along the lines of allowing developers to create a single solution inside Visual Studio, where you can have projects that share code between iOS and Android, the web possibly, Windows Phone, whatever. I mean, however you want to do it. And be able to better create those things all at once together, as you should. And that benefit. So people, every time Microsoft does anything that's for another platform, people moan about it. But here's the deal: iOS and Android are 90-something% of the market. So if you make it simple for a developer to also target the remaining 8% or 4% or whatever it is, 5%, that's a win. That's a net win, because the alternative is ignoring it. It's just easier to ignore. It's already too hard. You can't find a single person who is proficient at iOS development, in Xcode, using Objective-C and their tools, and is proficient in Eclipse and in Java, and in the Android SDK, and is proficient in C# and the WinRT, WinPRT SDKs, and Visual Studio. Those people, that human being doesn't exist. So you have to.
I want to find
some way to cross between them.
That man should be found, or woman should be found.
He's a superhero if he's out there. I mean, I think you could have a passing understanding of all that stuff. I have a very thin surface veneer of understanding of that stuff.
I attempted Python once, Paul.
Could probably go between two, but it's hard. I mean, that's hard. All of those things are hard.
I attempted Python one time in my life.
Right.
And then I gave up. I said, I could hire someone to do this. I don't need to learn this.
Yeah.
Let's continue drinking. One thing that I'm really looking forward to hearing about is development on the Xbox opening up. And initially, when the one was, I guess was it last year or the year before, when they were talking about the Xbox One, they had initially said, we are opening this up for developers, for app developers, because we want there to be cross-platform. We know how closed the 360 is. People ask me all the time, how come you don't have an app on the 360? Well, I could, but it'll cost me a lot of money to get on the 360. Right. They actually, I believe, I could be wrong, and someone tell me if Rob Greenlee's in the room, because I've had the discussion with him. I believe there's a significant cost to be on the 360 where larger companies could afford it. I cannot. I can't make an app and say, hey, Microsoft, can you put this on the 360 for me? That would be great because I would get a ton more exposure, but it doesn't work like that. And they're very strict on what they allow. With the Xbox One, they had initially kind of teased. They didn't say that this is how it's going to be, but they had hinted that you could anyone could initially make an app, submit it, and it could be in their app store, and it's open to independent content creators. That hasn't been the case over the last year.
Yeah, so we'll see. I know that Xbox One is going to be part of build to some capacity, given the recent announcement, and by recent I mean like today, that they're moving Xbox under Terry Myers, part of what they call the OS Group, which is Windows Client. I think it's fairly obvious what's happening there. And I would be surprised if they didn't use this as an opportunity to really get into that. One of the things a source had told me was that, I talked earlier about how the Windows Vision thing was like a big part of the keynote, the day one stuff. The show's 3 days long. And what I was told was that the rest of the show, the actual show, like you go to sessions and stuff, was very heavily tilted toward two things, which are not Windows proper: Windows Phone and Xbox. And I think that the Windows Phone side is fairly obvious. It's Windows Phone 8.1, the next major version of the OS. But the Xbox side is obviously Xbox One. And why would you talk about Xbox One at a developer show unless you were going to tell people how they can write apps and games for Xbox One?
And so there's been a change of the guard for Xbox also. Phil Spencer's now head of the division. Mm-hmm. So
right. Yep.
I don't know if that's going to make any kind of difference or not.
Well, he reports to Terry Myerson, so it's all going under Windows.
It's an exciting time for Microsoft, and I don't know if it's because I've gotten kind of engulfed in the Microsoft world because of you. Engulfed. I'm engulfed in iOS at home, and I'm engulfed with Microsoft discussions. I don't know if it's because of you and MJ, because I talk to you guys, and a lot of our viewers are diehard fans of Microsoft, and they use the product, and I feel a connection with it somehow, even though I'm using a Mac on a regular basis, and you can make fun of me all you want, but I use a Mac. But I feel like it's only fair for me to be in both environments to kind of comment on it fairly. I do find it an exciting time for the company, and I do think that since Vista, this excitement for the future has not really existed.
Yeah.
Where, it's up in the air. We see this idea, we see the vision that they have. We just don't know how it's going to be executed and how it's going to benefit us.
When Windows Vista was happening, when they were developing that, it was still the old Microsoft, This was a company that really had done nothing wrong. Obviously, they had done tons wrong, but nothing that had stopped their growth, that they were still able to do whatever they wanted and make it happen, and everything was going to be okay. You think back to 2005, 2006, the iPhone didn't exist. The iPad didn't exist. Android didn't exist. The Mac was 5% of the market or less or whatever it was. And they were selling a bunch of iPods, but who cares? That's, okay, so they beat us in MP3 players. Who cares? Obviously, a lot has changed since then. And I think the biggest success of what Microsoft is doing now is that by not doing the go it alone approach, by not just assuming that if you build it, people will come, we'll just put out a new version of Windows. That's always worked in the past. But Microsoft is going to be part of everything that you do. And so if you use a Mac, if you use iOS devices, iPhones, iPads, if you use Android handsets or tablets, you choose a Windows tablet, a Windows PC, whatever. All of their core apps are going to be there. If they're not now, they will soon be. And that means Office and OneDrive for Business and Office 365. There are going to be games. There are going to be music services and video services, and Bing is going to be there, and all this stuff. And that becomes your Microsoft experience. For some people, it will remain a PC plus a phone, maybe a tablet. For other people, it might be you with a Mac and you have an iPod or an iPad rather, and maybe you have an iPhone, or someone who has Android devices or whatever. It won't matter. That you'll be able to go back and forth and still access all of your information, get all of your data, whether it's documents or music or videos or whatever, and it will all happen through Microsoft stuff. The way that OneDrive is now, you can configure your iPhone to back up all of its photos to OneDrive instead of to iCloud. You can configure your Android phone to do that. It's built into Windows Phone.
And why wouldn't you, right? Why wouldn't you configure your phone to do that if your primary computer?
Yeah, I would personally. Yeah. Obviously, if you're kind of approaching the world from an Apple lens, and you're up that's all you care about. You might just do the iCloud stuff. You may pay for that. That may be what you want to do. That you have choices now, I think, is the point. And it's not subversive. In many ways, this is the way that Microsoft used to be. It was a provider of software for the popular platforms of the day, whatever they were. And now it is again. Windows is part of it, obviously. And I hope, as sort of a fan of Windows, that they will give Windows special treatment, and that Windows will have additional features that make it superior to whatever else. And we'll see how that goes. But, the world is heterogeneous. It just is. So
I also think that the concept of Microsoft evolving slowly, that's totally out the window now. That's not going to happen where you're going to get an operating system every 3 years and you get incremental fixes here and there, but nothing major. A great example that someone brought up to me once was Windows Media Player, on how this thing was so slow to evolve. And
because it was tied to Windows.
Because it was tied to Windows. And because it was tied to Windows, it opened up the market to all these third-party players, and still to this day, like, it can't play certain formats.
And there are,
there are reasons why, but
imagine you were someone who actually used Windows Media Player, and this was your thing for some reason.
Yeah.
You latched onto it in XP days, and you liked it, whatever. I mean, some people did, I don't know, but and you kind of upgrade over time, and several years goes by. Maybe get a Vista computer, maybe get Windows 7 computer, whatever it is. But the thing is, like, at some point, not only do you have to wait 3 years for that upgrade for Windows, but then the upgrade arrives, and that thing is not updated, right?
Nothing is different, yeah.
That happened in Windows Media Player. It happened with Windows Media Center, certainly, and that's doing its own little circle the drain thing right now. It's bad enough to wait 3 years for something, but what if you wait 3 years and that wasn't updated? Now you're kind of screwed. I mean, it still works, but
you'll be surprised how many people use Windows Media Player, and I was astonished by, we're talking about numbers and people's usage that Microsoft does. We are part of the Windows Media Player radio, whatever I think, whatever that thing is called.
Yep.
So there's a GFQ live stream in Windows Media Player. It's hidden away. It literally took me 45 minutes trying to find this thing. It's so hidden away, nobody knows where it is. I look at my stats for the live stream. 60% of my listeners come from that. Really? It's astonishing to see that, considering we're on Stitcher, we're on TuneIn, we're on iTunes Radio, which that's another thing that people listen on. iTunes Radio. That to me means people, whatever is available to them, that's what they listen on. They're not searching for whatever. They're not going to use VLC or another player. People are using this thing, and the experience is horrible.
Yep. Yes, it is.
It's just fascinating. But are those things that we've seen these major changes in the OS? But are we going to start seeing core functionality things like a media player change because people are not happy?
Yes. So, I don't know about Windows Media Player. Like, in other words, like
if enough people complain now, because that apparently is what's happening. People complain. They realize that there's something wrong. They change it.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. But for example, I would say by the time Windows 9 rolls around, you'll be able to run Xbox Music and Xbox Video in a window. They already have local playback capabilities, the ability to handle local collections of content if that's the way you want to go. And I think just that capability makes those applications far more interesting to people. So it's not, I wouldn't think of it as individual or very specific applications, but rather just those capabilities. One of the nice things that did happen in Windows 8 is that the apps were essentially, they're bundled with the OS, but they're also decoupled from the OS in the sense that they can be updated at any time. And so I don't know this for a fact, but I bet the Xbox Music app, just since Windows 8.1 came out in October, has probably been updated 7 or 8 times. Whereas Windows Media Player, if on a similar trajectory from, I don't know what release, where it last mattered, Windows Vista maybe, was updated 0 times, aside from security fixes and things like that. So, I mean, this is a big, big change.
I lost what I was going to say. I had a really good point to make too. You know what it was? Here it is. The Zune player, for example.
Yeah. Yep.
I love this thing.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
It was what they should have had on Windows 7, and it should have been bundled with it, and that should have been their media player. But it wasn't. Sure. Nobody knew about it.
So
nobody knew to download it. You could get podcasts on it. I was amazed.
If you bought a signature PC, it was bundled on it, right?
It was.
It kind of showed you where their head was at.
At
the time.
I mean, was there any rumblings to make that kind of the player, the go-to player? I guess because the Zune name had such a negative stigma to it, but
it crashed and burned so quickly. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, The first version of the Zune PC software was just Windows Media Player rebranded and with a fresh look. It was actually pretty horrible. The version that you know and love, the one you're thinking of, is started with version 2, and so Zune 2, 3. I don't know if it ever got to 4. I don't remember anymore. But those versions,
I think it was
the kind
4,
of retro looking kind of thing.
It still works.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, and I think the problem is there's a big conceptual shift in the way that kind of mainstream computing is occurring, and that's cloud computing, right? And the Zune software, for as cool as it looked or whatever, as nice as it might have been as an app, was the last great media player from Microsoft that was old school. That was, you're going to work with a local collection, that you'll go to the cloud to go to a store, and then you will buy music and you will download it to your computer, and that is how you will enjoy it. Whereas Xbox Music approaches music from the complete opposite perspective. You may have music on your local computer, but we think most of that music is going to be in the cloud. And even without a Zune Pass, you could spend hours or days or weeks browsing through the store, adding music to your collection. And when you sign into Xbox Music on any Windows PC or on your phone, well, actually not the way the new app is, but let's say on your phone, that collection will just appear. You don't have to pay for that. It's there. You can stream it. It's something you can access. If you want to download that music from that cloud collection to your device, you need an Xbox Music Pass, so there's a subscription. And I think, the cynical types will say, well, see what they're doing there, right? They're making you pay for something that you used to kind of get for free, which is not actually true. But they've gotten you into a situation where you're paying for something, because what Microsoft wants is to pay for it. And they do. But the amount of functionality you get out of something like Xbox Music for free, I actually think is fairly impressive. And if you do have that local music collection, it works fine. It works great. It works better if you pay for it, but it works great just for free. And so I hear you on Zune. I hear that from people a lot. I certainly love Zune myself, but I recognize for the same reason that someone uses Dropbox for documents or OneDrive for documents, Xbox is that for music. And you may not be ready for it yet. You may not believe that this is true, but that's not just the future of music services. It's the present. It's the way things are going forward.
Talking about Dropbox, have you used Google Drive for storage at all?
Yeah.
How do you like it?
It's fine. Like you can get a client for Windows from Amazon, from Google. You can get one from Apple, by the way, from iCloud. You can get one from Dropbox, obviously. SugarSync, whatever, all these services. But, when you're in the Microsoft...
There's an iCloud client for Windows? How does it work? Yep. Just like it creates a drive of your iCloud stuff?
I don't want to say.
Okay.
I will just tell you that there is one, and I'm not going to worry about it. Okay. Because who cares? Nobody in their right mind would ever use this thing. It's a way to sync bookmarks and whatever. It doesn't matter. There is one. Let's leave it at that. There is one. When you're in the Windows world, though, it makes the most... If you're in Windows primarily, you use OneDrive. This is a no-brainer. It's integrated into Windows 8.1 in particular in such a way that it is just incredible. It does settings sync across apps in the OS. It does the document sync stuff automatically without an add-in application. It's finally started. They botched it in the original 8.0 release. In 8.1, they fixed it. I think it works great. And so I just think that people who use Windows primarily, that's what they use. So yes, you could use Google Drive. It would work. It works in kind of the same way as Dropbox does or Amazon, whatever, in that you have some, folder in your file system that represents what's in the cloud. You can choose to mark stuff as offline, online, whatever. You can do that.
Because I have Google Drive and I'm paying for the 100 gigs of storage for like $1.99. And I also have Dropbox, which I'm paying $9.99 for 100 gigs. I'm just trying to figure out if it makes any sense for me to keep Dropbox and just go to Google, or just canon and just go to Google.
Obviously, there's like a price war going on. Honestly, I like OneDrive, and I think OneDrive is the one that makes the most sense. But and I think any of these will work okay. It kind of depends on what you're doing, and what platforms you use primarily. Obviously, Google just dropped prices, but I don't personally feel any compelling reason to switch for that reason.
Yeah,
I think a lot of this inertia,
See, I'm on the Mac,
you get
so
gigabytes of documents, you're not going to switch.
I'm on the Mac, so what do I use?
This is a OneDrive client for the Mac.
Yeah,
you could use that. I mean,
could use that.
I bet most people on the Mac use Dropbox, right?
I think that's the prime. But I think most
probably a split
people use
between that and-
Dropbox. Everybody
use
that I
iCloud.
know has Dropbox. Everybody uses it. Nobody knows why. I think it's because they're the ones that got the best marketing out there.
I know, exactly.
Like Box was offering you what is it? Box? Yeah, Box. They were offering you 50 gigs for free, and nobody was using it. And now Google has come out with Drive, and whoever I talk to about Google Drive, they go, yeah, but you know what? I use it for my documents, but I don't really use it for anything else. I'm like, but you can. That's the point of it.
Right.
You're supposed to.
I don't know how these other services work across all the devices. All I can tell you is that I like OneDrive for so many reasons, but I'll give you one which will kind of maybe bring it together a little bit. I mentioned earlier that you can back up your photos from any device using OneDrive. So I don't know if Dropbox does that. I don't know if that's a feature of Dropbox. I don't know if that's a feature of Google Drive. I don't think so. Obviously, if you have an Android device, you're getting that backup through Google Plus Photos or whatever. It doesn't matter. But I think that OneDrive is this one service that will do that for all of your devices. So if you have a Windows PC or tablet, if you have a Windows Phone, if you have an iPhone, if you have an iPad, if you have an Android tablet or handset, you can configure OneDrive, and every time you take a photo, it will back up in full resolution quality, if that's what you want, to OneDrive to the same exact folder. So you could have multiple devices. All of them are backing up to the same folder. And so you can go look at like a photo stream of all of your photos from every single one of your devices in one place. And I know Apple does that for Apple devices. I know that Google does that for Android devices. And someone can prove me wrong. I don't really care because this is what I'm going to use. It doesn't matter. But I believe that Microsoft is the only one that does it across all the devices.
So here's my issue, okay? With what Apple does. The way that Apple does it, they don't offer you a lot of storage. It backs it up, fine, but it's very easy to run out of storage on that for their
and they start
iCloud.
kicking stuff out on the other end.
So what ends up happening is that every time, let's say, every time there's an OS update, it'll do a complete backup of your phone on iCloud.
Right,
and that's like 4 gigs. My wife ran out of storage like a while ago. She didn't know. And half her photos were gone when she wiped everything away.
Right.
That's what they do. What Google does is totally the most convoluted thing now. Because not only do you have, when it comes to photos, right? You have Photos, which is Google Plus Photos, and you have Gallery.
Right.
So let's say I take a picture I don't like. Okay. I delete it in Photos. Doesn't mean it's deleted from my phone. I have to go to Gallery, delete it from Gallery. Doesn't mean it's deleted from my backup. I have to actually access Google Plus, go into my backup, select it, delete it. But it's not deleted. Guess what? It goes into the trash bin for 60 days. It holds the images in the trash bin. So when I backed up my phone, I wiped out the phone and I re-uploaded everything. I had like 5 versions of every photo because it was like the crappy versions that I took. You snap a couple times and then you hope that one of them works. It was every single photo that I ever took, even though I had deleted it from the phone. It doesn't actually delete it from the cloud backup.
Right.
So you have like 4 different places you got to delete a photo from.
Yeah, well, that's going to be an issue, I think, on many cloud-based things. All I can say, look, I mean, I just went and looked at this. I have almost 7,000 photos in my what's still called the SkyDrive camera roll. They date back to July 12th, 2010, which is the day that I got my first Windows phone, the prototype phone. The first photo that's in there is a photo from the back of a cab in New York City because I was driving away from the meeting where they handed me the phone, and I took a picture with it, right? And there's another picture of my then phone, the iPhone something, I can't tell which kind of 3G or 3GS, whatever was new in 2010, sitting next to my ThinkPad on the train because and by the way, I can see the Zoom software running on the screen, which is funny. And then I have every single photo I've ever taken ever since on every single device I've ever owned is in OneDrive.
Now, do you manage the photos? Like, do you delete the crappy ones, or you just whatever you took, you took?
Oh, don't care. Yeah. This is just a kind of a blast of everything. The funny thing is, I noticed too, looking at this, that prototype device was like a Samsung phone, and so it says Samsung. Obviously, phones have location data, and they have an associated, like a metadata for that. I don't know if this was just broken or it was something wrong with that first phone because it was a prototype. But according to according to OneDrive, the location of that first photo is Xinjiang, Uyghur, China, and not New York City.
Well,
which is where I am.
that's not right. Hey, talking about photos, I took a photo over the weekend, and look what I came across.
Nice.
It is a Microsoft store in New York.
They're birthing one in New York. Where in New York?
In Garden City, Long Island, Roosevelt Field Mall. Not too far away from me, probably. Hey, Jess, how far are we from the mall? 25 minutes.
Yeah.
We're 25 minutes from the place. And it is huge. I mean, it's literally I was astonished how big the store is. I mean, humongous. And it is 2 stores down from the Apple store.
Yeah, they often are. Yeah.
It's actually 2 stores down from the Apple store and 6 stores down from the Sony store.
Still Sony store. That's interesting.
Paul, I'm going to tell you something. Jess and I like to go in there because nobody's ever in there. There's nobody. Right. It's a ghost town. I don't even think it's a real store. I just think they just have TVs up there and they just hope someone walks in. It was packed.
That's funny.
I went in there on Sunday. The store was packed with sales guys everywhere.
Right.
It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. People were looking at 4K TVs that some guy was buying a 4K TV. I listened to the entire conversation. He's financing it for 48 months. It's like a lease.
That's awesome.
And Justin,
right.
I'm like, Jess, we're not going in here. I don't want to deal with it because they're going to come to you and they're going to ask you what you want. And I'm going to say, I don't want anything and walk out. So I just went in there and I saw the sales rep and I walked right out. But I was astonished how packed it was. But I'm curious if Microsoft is strategically placing these stores where Apple stores are.
Yeah. Well, that's something they've been doing. I mean, ever since the first couple.
Do you think it helps?
I mean, obviously, sometimes it leads to some unfortunate comparisons, but I think overall it does help. Yeah. I
also went into the Apple store. You can't even move. It's like waiting online to go on a ride at Disney. I mean,
right.
tons. It's swarmed with people asking how do you download your grandson's photos. You know.
Yeah.
Just dumb question after dumb question. We were in there for like a good hour, just looking around. I was playing around with the new Mac Pro, which is ridiculous.
Did you throw any trash in it?
No, but I wanted to stick my finger in there, like to see,
just like eat your hand.
Yeah. Like I wanted to put my hand in there and like take a picture where like I'm cutting my arm off. But I was surprised at the Microsoft store and how big it is.
Yeah.
And strategically, like I'm thinking. Best Buy and all these retail, like Staples, they cannot be too happy that Microsoft is getting into the retail market. Because where would you want to buy your laptop? At Staples or the Microsoft store?
Those guys are to Microsoft store what the PC makers are to Surface, which is Microsoft has been begging them to get this right for years and years and years. They don't listen. They never get it right. They never do it right. You go in there and there's like frayed cords and scratch screens and the demo thing isn't working and
keys are missing.
Yeah, they just don't care. And so I hear that complaint and I get it, but you know what? Screw those guys. They've been messing this up forever.
I mean, I would rather it's like when, Best Buy still sells Apple devices.
Yep.
Who goes to Best Buy to buy an Apple device? Why would you?
I don't know. Well, sometimes they have sales, by the way. That would be one reason.
$50, I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess they'll throw in, maybe something.
It's not like it's not like Apple's not going to support it. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, if I'm a consumer, who do I trust more to buy this computer? And especially if I'm spending $1,000 to buy a computer,
yes.
Microsoft or the guy in Best Buy.
Right. Yeah, there's no comparison.
Yeah, so I'm curious on how that's going to affect them, but I thought it was really cool that they're taking up so much space, and they're going to do a lot with that. This is going to totally change the way that people wait online for games, releases of games for the Xbox.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, you can't deny that it's not like a net win. I mean, I'm sorry, I should say it is literally a net win, but there are always going to be downsides to these kind of changes, and it's not always better. There are going to be some things that are better. I mean, my gut check on that will come in November when the new Call of Duty game comes out. And, do I go to a store that night? My son was joking around about this sometime past couple of weeks. He said, we should just buy this thing on the Xbox and start it downloading, and then you and I can hop in the car. We'll drive to Best Buy
and buy another copy.
Drive around the parking lot, just drive back, And I mean, that would do it too. So I don't know. We'll see.
Paul, before we wrap up, I want to talk about our Patreon campaign.
Okay.
We are starting a Patreon campaign. So if you're watching this, you're either watching us live or you're watching us on Patreon, on the front page of Patreon. And let's talk about our journey together, Paul. Paul joined the show about 3 years ago. Yep. We met at a bar. He mocked my droid. What did I have? A Motorola Droid.
You got the original. It was the Motorola Droid.
Yes, and you mocked me.
One with that gold fingerprint thing on it.
I still have it somewhere. I gotta find it.
Yeah.
Paul mocked me, and ever since then, we've been best of friends. Best of friends.
So many of my friendships have started, sadly.
over you mocking people?
It's me mocking somebody, and then, hey, what are you doing next weekend?
So we've been doing the show for a couple of years now, and the show has grown to an unbelievable amount. I'm so surprised on how many people watch from every part of this country, world, pretty much. Every part of this country, too. A lot of Canadians, guys. I see you guys in Canada. Saskatchewan, especially.
I can see your house from here.
Yeah. We have a 98% approval rating in Saskatchewan, Canada. But we want to continue.
They're so nice there.
They're so nice. But we want to continue growing the show. And a way that we have figured out we could do that is by creating a Patreon campaign. And what Patreon is, it's a crowd-funded project, much like Kickstarter, but it's generating constantly. So the campaign never ends. You guys fund it, and you guys commit to whatever the amount is that you want to commit to, and that is what we get per show, and that's how we're setting it up. So all we're asking for technically is $1 a show. If you like the show, you want to support the show, you could give us $1. We're not canceling the show. We're not going to make it a premium show, but we are going to offer people who pledge to us on Patreon bonus shows. Like Paul and I, after the show, we will sit down and pretty much do like another 30 minutes of content. We'll talk about whatever. Paul and I like World War II. We talk about aliens. We talk about drinking. We talk about beer.
Right.
So all these things that we talk about after the show that we've been kind of throwing away because we don't record, we're going to create into its own podcast. We don't have a name yet, but we're going to create it into something for the people that pledge for the Patreon campaign. Also, some of the other things that are going to change is I know a lot of people love it when we don't really have an ad on the show. We're going to stick with Audible because that is part of the show. It's always been part of the show, and actually people enjoy our Audible spots. But we kind of want to make it ad-free. If you're watching on Patreon, you can scroll down and see what the goals are and what happens when we reach those goals. Another thing is the live stream. We want to make it ad-free also. Those mid-rolls and pre-rolls, we want it to go away. And we need to make it ad-free. But in order to do that, it actually costs some money. It's not as cheap as people think it is. Someone in the chat room says, a alien drinking show. Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. We're listening. That's what we're going to do.
I'll wear that antenna headband thing.
Also, we're going to have a ton of bonus stuff also that Paul and I plan on doing. Another idea was that we would do a bonus show just totally separate from all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And another thing that Paul had pitched an idea was if we reach a certain goal, you guys get a copy of his book.
Yep.
That's another thing that we're going to put in. So if you're watching on our page, look at the goals. We're asking for $1. If you want to donate more, we are not going to tell you not to. We're not saying no. You can donate whatever you want per episode. And you're not going to be charged for more than 4 shows a month. We're not going to pull something over you and say, okay, we're doing 4 shows.
August does have 5 Fridays or 5 Tuesdays.
Because I know I got a message from someone that said, hey, what happens if you guys decide, hey, I'm going to do 8 shows because these guys have pledged, $20 a show. Now we're not going to do that. We're going to do 4 shows. If the bonus content is going to be bonus content that goes to the people that pledge. And it could be anything.
I do like that someone's already looking for contract loopholes.
Yeah, that's the amazing part.
Abuse the system. We thought we'd ask you for money, and then we thought we would abuse you.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have been sending donations through PayPal. If you have let me know, and I will provide you with the bonus content. You don't worry about it. Or I'll cancel that, whatever you guys are doing, and you guys could just pledge to Patreon. But I'm really excited for this. I think that we could kind of grow the show the way that we want to do it, uninterrupted. Another thing that we were considering is if we start generating extra funds, we'll extend the show a little bit. We'll add more to the show. So the opportunities are endless. The things that we want to do are endless. Nothing is set in stone. If you guys have ideas, that's something that we want to listen to. The other thing was the phone call show. We had done a test show a couple months ago. People gave me their input. Some people liked this, some people didn't. So what I was thinking we would do is have a call-in show where it's not like, hey, Paul, I got a Zune Touch or Zune HD, and I'm having this issue with it. How do I fix it? No, it'll just be about technology, and you chit-chatting with us and talking about what you guys like and what you don't like. That's going to be a bonus show for the Patreon campaign, and it'll broadcast live for the people that are doing the Patreon, which, by the way, it could be anything. We're asking for $1. If you want to do more, you could. Want to do less? That's possible, too. You could do that, too. So we're not forcing you to anything, and nothing is going to change with the show. It's not like Paul and I are going to be like, Paul, it's that free show.
Right. Let's deliver 13 minutes of babbling and get this over with.
Let's make this one extra crappy to prove a point. Nothing like that is going to change. Right. Maybe more drinking shows, because we're doing that right now, and we enjoyed the drinking show. Maybe a drinking call-in show.
Although,
if we generate...
I don't know if we want Andrew recommendations.
Yeah. I have this idea. If we generate $5,000 per show, Paul and I will have a one-on-one basketball game.
Wow. And I want to be very clear about what's going to happen, because I will take you to the hall.
If I win, Paul has to wear an Apple shirt. The one with Steve Jobs in the middle of the Apple logo.
Yeah. I feel comfortable about this.
And if I lose, Paul has to come up with something. I don't know what I could do, because I already embarrass myself on a regular basis. So we'll figure it out. So we'll have like crazy goals, if it's working out, if you guys enjoy it. Or if not, listen, if you're not going to pledge, no problem. Nothing happens. Nothing changes. Just Paul says, another failed attempt, Andrew. And then he hits me.
Right.
So that's our Patreon campaign. That's what we're hoping, and we hope that you guys would join in on the fun. So that part of you see what I did there, Paul? I put it into one show so we don't have to do it after the show.
Yeah, no, smart.
Yeah, so I'm actually excited for it. I'm actually excited about the couple of things that we're going to do, and we're going to come up with more ideas.
Yeah, I hopefully this week, although this week's going to be busy. I was talking to Raphael about this over the weekend. We did the book thing, and it was interesting to see how that went. And we're going to write a post that will be something like, lessons learned, that kind of thing. And when you ask people for money and how weird that is, and
it is weird,
and how unique the reactions are. I mean, it never works out the way you expect it to, and in my case, certainly it didn't work out as well as I'd hoped it would. But I think that, in the book case, once we get it up on Amazon and so forth, hopefully it takes off in a more meaningful way. But there's some interesting lessons there. I mean, when you do stuff like that, you kind of put yourself out on the line a little bit, and some people really show up.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people actually support what you're doing, and then it's amazing that people get upset. And I understand if people get upset if you're taking something away from them. I totally understand that. Right. Tom Merritt, a friend of the show, I'm actually on his podcast April 14th, which you've been on too. I'm going to be on again. Yep. Tom has been super successful with his Patreon campaign, where I believe he's generating over $10,000 a month on Daily Tech News Show, which is a daily show, which is unbelievable for a podcaster without an ad. Wow. Also, Brian Brushwood and him do a show called Cord Killers, which I'm a big fan of. They're generating about $2,600. Night Attack, which was formerly NSFW on Twit, they're generating a whole lot of money. So people are out there and they want to support what you're doing. And I would rather give people a uncut show with no ads. I'm saying we hope to do no ads. Audible will stay because people enjoy that, and I enjoy the Audible reads. But I want to cut out all the other ads because I feel that the show flows a lot better. It kind of sucks when I'm in the middle of the show, and I'm like, Paul, hold that thought, because we're talking for 25 minutes. I have to take 3 spots because I have 3 ads on that show. Yeah. And then it kind of is like, okay, how do you come back with this? It's a kind of a struggle to come back. So, we're going to try something here. And we have a tremendous audience, and that I'm astonished at how many people watch. It's actually unbelievable. Every time I'm in Penn Station, Paul, somebody will stop me and say, I really like What the Tech. It's insane. And I told my wife this. She thought I was... She's like, you know what? Maybe you were drunk and a guy mumbled something and that's what you thought, because I'm always drinking in Penn Station like I'm homeless. She saw it happen. We were waiting for the train to come back. It was 11 o'clock. A guy came to me and goes, hey, Andrew, I'm a big fan of What the Tech. Say hi to Paul.
Wow.
And Jess goes, oh my God, that does happen. That does happen. It's a little scary, but it does happen. Paul, you're leaving. When are you leaving to build? Tomorrow?
7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, awful. Wednesday, are you doing Windows Weekly at Twit?
No, we're going to do it Friday. We're going to go up to Petaluma. So after the show ends on Friday, and so early. We don't actually have a set time, but I think it's going to be 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that.
Have you done a show from there? I think you did.
Yeah, we did it last year at Build as well, actually, and I've done it here and there. I mean, a couple of summers ago, we went out to California on vacation. We did a show. I did a show from there.
It should be a good one.
Yeah.
And Paul and I have never done a show in studio. You know what? If we reach a certain goal, we'll do that too.
Right.
We'll do a show in the studio.
I'll prove that Andrew is just a hologram.
He'll put his hand right through me.
Right.
See?
Right. It will be like
I'll break apart.
A Mortal Kombat finishing move. Hey, sorry.
Who knows? Listen,
I thought you were a hologram.
I'm actually not real at all. I'm totally an animated character. Nobody in real life looks like this. Nobody. I don't know if I told the story and then we'll wrap it up, but I went out. My wife was away in Ireland for Valentine's Day, and I went out with my business partner. We went out to dinner because his wife is in California and I'm in, my wife is in Ireland. So we're like, you know what? We're going on a date. We're going to go out to Uncle Jack's Steakhouse and have a nice date. We're going to get loaded and we're going to have steak and we'll see what happens at the end of the night. No promises. So we went out to dinner. We're having, I'm on my way back. I'm waiting for a cab and this woman comes over and she goes, I know you. And I'm like, she's going to say What the Tech. I know it. But she's like, I know you from somewhere. Do you know Joey Diaz from Corona? And I'm like, oh my God, she's so drunk. I'm like, no, you know where you know me from? I'm a magician. I perform magic in Bryant Park.
Birthday parties for kids.
No. I said, I do magic in Bryant Park across from the hotel. You may have seen me there. I'm there always in the spring and the summer. I'm doing a lot of magic. She's like, that's where I know you from. I go, yep. Awesome. She goes, keep it up. It was really good. And Yikes. She just walked away.
Yikes.
My business partner Spencer's like, what was that? I'm like, I just told her I perform magic and she says I know.
Yep, she agreed.
I'm curious who the person is that she thinks I am.
Right.
That's what I'm amazed at. Yeah. So that was my real people don't look like this. Because she's like, yeah, I see it. I get the magic thing. The goatee and the bloated face. I totally get that.
Jeez.
I had like 5 martinis. I was like, all puffed up. So that's it, Paul. Let's wrap it up. Next week, I don't know what we're going to do because I'm in Vegas.
Yep.
I will be back Thursday if you're free on Thursday.
I think I am.
If not, you know what? We could skip a week and we could go, do it.
Why don't you just go and see what you feel like and we'll talk.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
If it happens, it happens. We'll know more towards the end of the week because it's I'm going to probably be back on Wednesday and who knows what I feel like on Thursday.
Right.
Because Vegas is kind of tough for 5 days. That's it, guys. We're wrapping up. Hey, if you want to also support us, you could do so by using our Amazon affiliate link. Every time we need to buy something for the studio, it helps us out a lot. All these wires, all these microphones that we're getting in the studio, it's due to you guys because you guys constantly use the Amazon link. If you're on the new website, it's right on top. There's a banner on the top. You could just click on that and it'll take you to Amazon and you could just buy anything. Or you could go to gfq.co/Amazon. That's gfq.co/Amazon. WinSuperside.com, all things Paul Thurrott. You're doing Windows Weekly this Friday, live in Petaluma.
Yep.
Should be a fun show. I'll be watching. And where can people get the book?
Windows81book.com.
Perfect. You can get the
we're
book
gonna
and
send it up to Amazon hopefully this week. So I think it's in. I don't want to say it's en route, but we're working on it. So that's this week's goal, to get it up on Amazon and the other ebook publishers.
How long does that take? Like between the submission and
we're just doing it. So I'll let you know. We're going through a third-party service. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. And you can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Zarian. You can follow Paul at Thurrott. Also, we have a Facebook fan page. What the Tech? Just search What the Tech on Facebook. I don't know the exact link.
It's so much less fun than Facebook fan fiction. But
Facebook fan fiction is a lot of fun. You know, I
like
recently
what the Tech, except like in the world of The Walking Dead.
There should be What the Tech fan fiction. I'm actually terrified to see what the Tech fan fiction would be about us.
I would want to be the governor in that world.
In the What the Tech fan fiction?
Yeah.
I would want to be zombie number 62.
Right. Charged zombie.
Yeah, charged zombie. That's who I would want to be. Because why would you want to live in that world? All right, guys, let's wrap it up. We'll see y'all next time on What the Tech. Good night, everybody.